All right, all right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Trino meetup today. We have our folks Yi at from Pinterest today to talk about Trino at Pinterest. Really excited to have him specifically maintaining and scaling Trino at Pinterest. So let me bring him up here in a second. Oops. Yi, welcome. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for giving me the opportunity to uh, present here today.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for coming. Yeah, we're really excited to have you. We missed you at Trino Summit, so looking forward to hearing what's been going on in Pinterest and the Trino side. So everybody, feel free to kind of send in your questions as we go through the presentation today. A little bit of overview of what we got going on. So as usual, I typically start off things talking a little bit about some community things going on and kind of prompts and things. And we'll be adding all the links that I show here in the presentation. We'll be posting into the comment section if you're watching this on YouTube. Unfortunately, if you're watching us on Twitter and LinkedIn, we won't be able to send you the message. Or I think maybe actually we can. No, we'll send on LinkedIn. There's no way to really do it on the Twitter side. So we'll open the link there, and you'll be able to find everything there. And so let's get started. If you are kind of new to this area, and you know what we're Nitu is going to be popping in here in a second, talk about really what Trino is, and as well as the company that builds on it, Starburst, the company that we both work at. And what we basically kind of try to do is, if you're new to the community, you want to figure out how to kind of get in touch with people, how to start up using Trino, or basically intro to what are some use cases around this that it solves for you. I think one of the best kind of places is to head up is trino.io/Slack. That's going to be our primary area where a lot of us in the community, from even the Starburst side as well as the maintainers and the creators of Presto and Trino, all kind of hang out there. We like to kind of directly answer questions that people are having around this stuff. It gives us a lot of exposure into potential issues that are happening in the software. So we want to have you come there and reach out to us, and other resources that we have, particularly kind of if you want to just educate yourself, you don't want to necessarily reach out to somebody. We have the Trino community broadcast. The broadcast is a monthly now kind of show that we do with my partner in crime, Manfred Moser. What we typically do on these is cover some element of the community, like the ecosystem. So if we're thinking like ingestion or security around Trino, anything that's kind of tangential to Trino, we like to cover those elements as well, because you're not just a Trino engineer. Whenever you're using us, usually you're typically a data engineer that has many other concerns, especially when it comes around to how to correctly ingest the data, for instance, and make sure that it's going to be optimal for Trino to read it. So we cover all of these kind of elements outside of it, as well as of course the query engine itself, understanding how it works, understanding how to optimize it and make it scale and run a lot faster for you. So definitely check out the broadcast if you like to just tune in on videos or the podcast. It's available in both mediums, and that's also Trino.io/broadcast. Then we have you're currently, if you're listening to me right now, in one of the virtual meetups, and so basically. And yep, here is the link. So if you want to go to just starburst.io/info /Trino-community-resources. That is, and again, you can find that in the links if you don't, in the comments, if you want to just click on that. And they'll have all these links that I'm showing you here, and the other ones that also Nitu has. So basically, if you're here listening to me now, you're in one of the virtual meetups. We've essentially just split up the meetups across different time zones, and we're slowly building these out. First here in the Americas, we're getting a lot of momentum to start building it up in EMEA, and a very community-based effort in the Asia Pacific area. So depending on your time zone, sign up for those. In the next year, we really are focusing on building out the Europe and Asia Pacific time zones and the meetups out there. So look forward to that. And then if you want to contribute, if you are a developer or an engineer and you wanted to get involved in open source, and you not necessarily have to even write code, actually. If you're good at documentation, you can contribute to the Trino project. And easiest way to start out here is, well, first Slack. This is another good use case for Slack. If you're not just using Trino, but you're developing on it, we have a whole dev channel that we are there to kind of answer questions around development on Trino. So, you can go to trino.io/development and basically start to learn the way that you'll need to basically sign a license agreement saying that you're okay to donate your time and efforts to the Trino project, and different other elements there that can help you get up and started, and where to kind of open up the conversations in terms of what you should be working on and all that kind of stuff. Also, another slightly undervalued thing, we really could use your help building out blogs and telling us how you use Trino in your particular company, or if you're just using it at home and doing some really cool thing about it. We want to know, have you built out an interesting connector, or just fiddled around a little bit with some of the query listener elements? Write a blog about it and send it to us. We host them at trino.io/blog, and you can reach out to me on Slack, and I can kind of get you into the process on how to do that. And then there's yet another link here that is showing you where to find the documentation to learn how to get started on to contribute to docs. So yet another resource there, all contained in that master URL that was sent out in the comments down there. So definitely check that out. Okay, so that is how you get involved in the community. Oh, another one that just came up. We launched Trino Forum now. It's been a couple months. Back in I think it was like late October, right around the time that we had Trino Summit going on. So we are currently basically trying to make a lot of the discussions that are happening in Slack much more searchable and available to the wider public. Unfortunately, if you're not in Slack, there's no way to just search on Google and land on some of these topics that are talked about, and they're very useful bits of information. So we are currently in the project of building out Trino Forum, and just as much as we are kind of making the Slack discussions available, we also want to have kind of it's an organic community that grows and builds here. So definitely check out trinoforum.org, and it's going to and join up there and start seeing kind of like as people are posting things there. Would be great to get more people up and going and contributing resources there as well. Those don't have to be quite as if you're not really sure of your blog writing skills, or you just want to kind of help out, but you don't really have a lot of time to process and refine, this is a good location also to just throw out a quick tutorial or a quick how-to, or just some random bits of information that you found useful, as well as kind of a question and answer kind of forum like we have similar in kind of Slack. So a lot of different uses for Trino Forum. Definitely go check it out, and we're really excited that people are starting to show up more there. And then finally, if you have not done so already and you've been to one of these before, one of the things that we like to throw out on these meetups is just like you would at any in-person meetup, check out this last link here that will take you to a sign up for a t-shirt link. You can, yep, here, there's the t-shirt link right there. So that'll be also available in the comments. Click on that, and you will be able to just fill out your address and shirt size and all the information. And then we will send you this awesome Commander Bun Bun t-shirt. They're super soft. Everybody tells me like that's their favorite thing about them. So, we have the best and softest shirts. You'll want to sleep with them every night. So any questions that you have throughout the conversation, just let us know in the YouTube chat. Myself and Anna and Nitu will be monitoring that and bringing that up to Yi, as well as we can, if it's kind of a more just general Trino question, we can also answer that as well. Of course, after the fact, definitely hit up Trino Slack, as I mentioned before, and also, follow us on at TrinoDB on Twitter. My handle also is bits on DataDev. I will type that in the comments as well if anybody needs that, if they want to just ask me a question directly. So without further ado, Nitu, would you like to tell us a little bit about our favorite query engine and tell us why it's so awesome?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Brian. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome and thank you for being here today. I'll start with quick introductions, why I'm here and why I love being a part of this open source community, which is Trino. And since, Starburst, I work for Starburst and we're sponsoring this event, I do want to let you know a little bit about Starburst as well, if that's okay. All right. So without further ado, my name is Nitu Goswami. I am the regional sales manager. I cover all of Eastern Canada at Starburst. And like I said, I'm very excited to be here. So when you do hear about Trino, and of course, he's here to share some beautiful use cases, why they're using Trino at Pinterest, and we've had DoorDash, EA Games in the past do the same. There are some reasons that, often organizations want to look at the enterprise edition. So if any questions come up after I discuss or share what Starburst is, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to help you over there.
Me too. Do you mind sharing your screen too? I think we lost it.
Oh, sorry about that.
No worries. Just thought I'd catch us before you got hot into the sauce of talking about Trino.
Yes.
All right. Cool.
Right. Sorry, just give me 1 second, Brian.
Sure.
Sorry, a little bit of technical difficulty, but while I do that,
it happens. So, yeah, I think one of the really important things too is that we really want to make sure that anybody who is joining us for the first time, I'm actually kind of curious, I just want a show of hands. If anybody who is in the YouTube channels or Twitter or anything or LinkedIn channels, is anybody here pretty new to Trino or has not heard of Trino? Always interested to ask this question, and I never remember to do it. So do a quick post if you're like, this is one of the first times, if not, or if you're like maybe like the first month that you've been working with Trino and you're trying to learn more, just put that up in the comments if that's you. And then go right ahead, Nitu. I won't steal your thunder for too much longer.
right. And you see my screen now, right?
Yep. Yeah. Looks good.
Perfect. Awesome. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. And let's start with what is Trino, right? Like that's the first question that comes up. And if you are joining us for the first time, Martin Dane David actually founded Trino at Facebook, and formerly known as PrestoSQL. We are an open source distributed SQL query engine created by Martin Dane and David. In 2012, Dane, David, and Martin joined the Facebook data infrastructure team. Together with Eric Huang, they created Presto to address the problems of low latency interactive analytics over Facebook's massive Hadoop data warehouse. With the army of data scientists, data engineers that they had, they could not scale their queries. And hence, that's the reason why it was actually created at Facebook. We're 100% committed to Trino even today. So the founders are actually part of the Starburst executive team. But essentially, Trino is a distributed SQL query engine, MPP SQL query engine. So, it allows you to perform fast SQL queries on large data sets. I think hands down, that's the biggest use case. If you have a data lake and you're looking for a fast SQL query engine, Trino definitely helps with that. But it was created to empower analytics anywhere. And with proven scalability and high concurrency, users can combine data sources, analytical data sources, whether they're on-prem, in the cloud or multi-cloud, whether it's a data lake or a data warehouse, separating compute and storage functionalities. So that's a big one. So essentially, you get that horsepower, you get that power to essentially query data, any of the analytical databases, and combine those insights, right? So Trino is designed to be adaptive, flexible, and extensible. It supports a wide variety of use cases with diverse characteristics. These range from user-facing reporting applications. I think that's one of the use cases you will be discussing with sub-second latency requirements, to multi-hour ETL jobs that aggregate or join terabytes of data. We've had many customers talk about the different use cases. So I highly encourage, if you have some, friends that are in the data world, let them know about the open source Trino community, where we have many large enterprises share their use cases, how they're using Trino. So Trino allows organizations like AWS, Netflix, LinkedIn to deploy a single SQL system to deal with multiple common analytics use cases and easily query multiple storage systems while also scaling up to like 1,000 nodes. Its architecture and design have found a niche within the crowded SQL on big data space, but adoption has been great thanks to you guys in this open source community. As good as and as great as Presto is, there was a big opportunity to build upon open source Presto to create an enterprise grade Presto. Our founding team has been involved in Presto since the beginning. In fact, the creation of Starburst started at Teradata, where our founders were already working on Presto, contributing significant time and engineering hours as the number 2 committers behind the Presto creators. So the Presto creators are in fact now part of our founding team, as I mentioned. But Starburst was created on top of Trino to give you enterprise grade performance, connectivity, security, management, and support your company's growing needs. So if you feel like, you actually are using Trino, but a lot of man hours are going into managing it, definitely take a look at Starburst. With Starburst, the enterprise grade edition of Trino, you can have single point of access to all of your data, no matter where it resides, without needing to copy and move it. So we're definitely substantially reducing the need to move the data or ETL pipelines. But Starburst is the analytics engine for data mesh as well, a decentralized distributed approach to enterprise data management. It's a hot topic right now. So let me know if I can help in any way, but Starburst can be deployed anywhere and managed with insights. It's a pretty cool UI that gives you the visibility on which queries, which users are querying which sources. So data teams can holistically view their cluster operations and query execution so they can reach meaningful business decisions faster. So to unlock the value in all of your data, you need a solution that easily fits with what you have today and can adapt to your architecture tomorrow, or what we call as optionality. So how we think of ourselves and our customers describe us is a consumption layer, a semantic layer, abstraction layer. I've heard of data virtualization as well, or data mesh that sits between any end user accessing data through tools like Jupyter Notebooks, Tableau, Power BI. So pretty much any tool your data users use, they continue using the same, but essentially they take advantage of this consumption layer to query data in different sources. And the underlying data sources, like I was saying, right? So we do that across any deployment or hybrid deployments. So that was just a little spiel about Trino and Starburst. Happy to be here and continue to meet with you guys on a monthly basis. If I can be of any help, let me know. But excited to introduce you to Yi now, who will be actually discussing about how they are maintaining and scaling Trino at Pinterest. Welcome, Yi.
Hi. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yi. I'm from the Big Data Query Platform team of Pinterest, and today I will briefly go through how Trino is used in Pinterest and what's going on in Pinterest.
Yi, do you want to quickly turn on your camera just so that folks can
Oh,
you
okay.
can.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah. So I think the my presentation today will basically cover overview of Trino, Pinterest. What are our challenge scale and the challenges, and we will talk a little bit about how we leverage the warning system to guide user to write better queries, and we will talk a little bit about how Pinterest is transition into a fine-grained access control model, and how what is the role Trino is in it, and how, and also we will, and then we will talk a little bit about how we manage diverse workloads, and how we plan to bridge the gaps between Trino and Spark SQL. So first, let me give you an overview of how Trino is used in Pinterest. From the scale level, from the on Pinterest business scale is about 400 million monthly active users, and we have 200 billion pings, and we have more than 4 billion boards. On the data scale level, basically, we have 600, more than 600 petabyte of data stored in S3. We on peak we have more than 80K Hadoop job running daily, and we have more than 10,000 Hadoop nodes, and we have more than 1,000 Presto workers, and more 110,000 Hive tables. So basically, we run everything on AWS. This gave you idea of how our data infra evolved over the time in the last couple of years. So in, we in the beginning we started with using Kubo and Redshift, and in 2016 we basically decided that we will start to build uh, in-house systems, Hadoop systems, and basically that would give us more flexibility on security, and also give us more flexibility on Pinterest specific needs. Um, on 2018, we basically runs everything in-house, and we started the transition from migrating from deprecate Hive and move everything to Spark SQL. On 2022 today, we finished all the we deprecated all the Hive use cases in Pinterest, and we moved everything into Spark SQL, and we run our in-house Hadoop platform, and on top of it, we run Spark SQL and MapReduce jobs. Um, we run our own Trino clusters, which I will talk a little bit more about later. And we run our own high metasource services, and we are starting to increase the adoption for Iceberg. And we for real-time processing, we use Flink mostly for it. So this gave you a little bit idea of the scale of Trino at Pinterest. So for monthly active user, so it's almost equal to the number of Pinterest employee. So that means basically almost every employee within Pinterest has used Trino once or twice per month. And we have about 1.5 million of monthly queries processed through Trino, and actually that number basically roughly doubles every year. We are currently running on Presto SQL 320 version, and we are planning to move to a more recent version this year. On connectors, we use mostly Hive, MySQL, Druid, Swift, and Iceberg. We roughly have five production clusters. So we have two ad hoc clusters running on Kubernetes ports, and we have one scheduled clusters running on dedicated EC2 instances. and we have two other access restricted clusters that has access to sensitive data. Basically, we basically have a cross class query routing. So basically, our schedule cluster queries can be also run on ad hoc clusters during off-peak hours. For sensitive information, currently we are maintaining individual clusters. We plan to remove in this year to use fine-grained access control to make the access control not platform related, but more tied to the end user's permission. So this is how the system looks like. So we basically we have different personal clients within Pinterest. We have internal developed tool we call Data Hub, or in open source it's now named as Query Book, and it's basically a query authoring and visualization tool Pinterest use a lot to also to write SQL queries and run them. And we use Jupyter and Tableau a lot also to generate reports and visualizations. We also have some internal developed customized tools that queries Crystal. So basically, for these tools, we expose basically ELB endpoint to them, which is backed by a couple of personal gateways. And these gateways basically route queries to corresponding Perl clusters, in which it gets executed. And for our personal workers, basically runs in two types of machines. So either on dedicated EC2 instances or on Kubernetes ports. On top of that, we have a group of tools we call personal controller that helps maintain the healthy status of the cluster. So personal controller is basically a standalone service that we develop. So basically, it manages the personal clusters deployment and monitoring, and also self-healing. So basically, what it does is basically it sends out health checks to different personal clusters. It also can detect slow workers and basically drain them if necessary. And it can detect really expensive queries that blocks the cluster, and it kills them if necessary. It also handles like maintenance events like a daily rolling restart of the personal clusters, and scaling up and down the cluster when necessary. The personal gateway, basically what we use is basically a forked version of Lyft personal gateway. So it basically is a processor that routes a query based on either on predefined rules that, for example, if a query has a certain user and a certain source, it will be only routed to ad hoc cluster during 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. time frame, so that we can define a flexible different rules to route queries to different clusters. We also route basic queries based on the backend cluster's load, also, and as well as health. Another thing we added on top of the Lyft personal gateway is that we improved the UI a bit to provide visibility to our user on the backend cluster resource usage and health, and also the per organization resource usage and historical query lookup. So this is how the personal gateway UI looks like today. So so basically, it posts the stats of the backends. So are they healthy, or what are the resource usage on each cluster? Also, it provides basically historical query looks up. So one problem we usually have from helping user is basically they come with a query link that no longer works after the class restarts. And now we basically have a centralized place to look up the query and debug the query after they finish up to 2 weeks. We also expose how many resources used on each resource group, and you can first dive down by clicking on each resource group, and so that basically each team can manage their usage wisely. Uh, On the detail page, we will show details on why basically the query failed, and also basically the dive downs on the basically operations, like for example how which operator used most of the CPU, so to help user to quickly find out where they can optimize their query.
Hey, Yi, real fast, we got a quick question. Do you use KOps, I guess COPS, or EKS for the Kubernetes clusters? I'm actually not familiar with COPS, but or KOps if it's pronounced that way. But I'm guessing it's a way to manage your Kubernetes clusters.
For Kubernetes clusters, basically we Pinterest have an internal team that maintains it on our own premises. So basically, so they have basically, yeah. I'm not quite sure if they use EKS, but
so, but it's some managed, I assume, service, and is it using some cloud-based managed Kubernetes service like EKS?
no.
Oh, and okay.
Everything is managed within the Pinterest. So yeah.
Right. When I mean managed by, like, is there like EKS, for instance, just like takes away the whole necessity to manage the what's it called? They don't call it master node anymore,
Right.
but you know what I mean.
Yeah, we have a basically good collaboration with AWS team on like what our needs are, but in general, so we maintain the infrastructure.
Okay, so you're not using like a standardized like service like EKS to set up Kubernetes. You're just using kind of a custom one for Pinterest.
Right, that's right.
Okay.
So for Pinterest, in Pinterest, we actually leverage the warning system quite a bit for like helping users to write bad queries. Actually, we have over the years we have developed quite a bit of different warnings that helps user. For example, we alert the user when they query a huge non-columnar table, and basically we also alert user on when their query is written in a way that has a wrong join order or could be better optimized using a different join type. And we also like let the user know that their query probably have some really expensive operations that can be optimized on. We basically relay that information back to the user as the query executes, and so that basically they can cancel or optimize the query immediately to avoid like unnecessary waste of the cluster resource. So once in Pinterest, we previously managed basically. In Pinterest, we previously managed the access control based on assigning a different group of machines specific IAM role that have different access to a few groups of the data we like, for example, called normal or PII. which is basically personal identity related, and a few other special cases. So basically, we have a PII environment, non-PII environment, and the user's data access was controlled by who has the access to what environment. And basically, from last year, basically, we are transition into a more fine-grained model, access control model that basically each user's data access will be depend on what LDAP groups they are on. There will be no more differences on which cluster the query is running, but based on the end user's permission, what they can access to. So when a user submit a query, basically what happens is he or she will need to first be authenticated by OAuth. And for scheduled queries, like for example Jupyter, basically the Kubernetes port will be launched with encoded specific it, and different cert will be provided to that the port. Basically, we are in front of the personal coordinator. We have an envoy filter that translates the MTLS connections cert back to HTTP header with the username. So once you log in, we will validate to make sure that the personal username will match with the username authenticated. Then we will request a dedication token from Hive method store with that username. And basically, once we have the dedication token, we will forward that to workers. So when they start to need to read the data, when they need to access S3, they will check with the token service, remote service we call token service, to get back a STS token for temporary data access. So the STS token is basically generated based on the LDAP group the user is in, and the IAM managed policy attached to that LDAP group. So to give example, basically, if user 1 is in LDAP group A and group and B, so he will get a union of the AMP managed policy A and B are allowed to access. Then we will intercept that with a base rule to basically to exclude everything that we definitely don't want the user to access. And the same for user 2, if it's LDAP is in LDAP group A and C, they will only get the union of A and C is approved to work. As a end result, basically user 1 and user 2 will get different access to different S3 buckets and different prefixes. So going this way, basically, so we are no longer attached to the basically the IAM role the personal cluster is attached to. So basically, all the authentication, all the user access is based on what the user are actually permitted to access to. So we are planning to finish this transition in 2022. So basically, that would allow us to basically merge everything between PI and non-PI environment, and give us the flexibility to maintain resource across those. One challenge Pinterest has is basically we have really a diverse workloads. So usually, basically, the ad hoc usage for us is usually really unpredictable, and user can send back queries from that can cause problem in a whole cluster, and we often also see that resource is not well used. Basically, during peak hours, we have during the working hours, we have a lot of queries sent to personal clusters, and then in off-peak hours, the clusters are not that well used. So basically, we changed our gateway and resource management in a way. So basically, we can first do cross cluster routing, So basically, we first will make sure that the clusters are load balanced, so they can. So if a cluster is less busy, we will route more queries into it, and we also allow overflow of scheduled queries back to ad hoc clusters during off-peak hours. So because scheduled queries can be scheduled in off-peak hours, so running those then and overflow to ad hoc cluster better utilize the ad hoc cluster resources. We also moved to organization-based resource management model. So basically, we group the resource usage by users, team, and organization. And we assign compute quota to each organization. And basically, if a user overuse the quota for that organization, it will only cause the queries to be queued for the corresponding organization and team, basically. One thing actually we experimented a little bit last year is we want to reducing the gap between Trino and Spark SQL. So basically, one reason. So the biggest reason for that is our user often comes to us that so basically they use Trino a lot when they are prototyping writing their workflows and the jobs, and they like Trino because Trino is faster and Trino is easier to write. And however, when transitioned into production, a problem users often facing is basically there's a memory limit on how big the query can run. And also on the Spark SQL, they have a better resource management for scheduled workloads. So basically, to gapping that demands that when user usually want to prototype in Trino and run Spark SQL in production, we lasted a little bit last year to translate the basically Trino queries into Spark SQL. So basically, we allow them to basically what we did is basically we convert the personal plan into a into calcite IR3, and then we leverage the Coral to basically translate it back to Spark SQL and provide that to our users so that they can run it in a production cluster in Spark SQL. So yeah, so basically that is what is going on Pinterest so far. So basically there's some more exciting work we are planning in the future. So I think one thing we definitely want to evaluate is the pressure on graviton. So based on some the community estimation, it looks like it will have a great cost saving potential if we run pressure on graviton. But yet, this is something we would like to evaluate with our own workloads. We definitely would continue to add more pressure warnings to our system to further help our users. And one thing we definitely want to finish basically is we will make our entire environment fine-grained access controlled. The other work we plan to do is basically to help to improve the personal UDF authoring within Pinterest a little bit easier to make it easier for user to develop new UDFs. And also another thing we are planning is to provide a unified query service that basically seamlessly translate between Trino and Spark SQL that helps user to transit from one to another more seamlessly. So yeah, basically that's uh, everything from the presentation.
Awesome. So, yeah, I have a couple questions myself, but I want to anybody who's watching, feel free to comment, and we'll bring your questions up as we ask some of these. So, I had a couple things that came up throughout the presentation. So, how far along are you all in kind of? I know you said Hive is still your majority connector. But how far along are you all with kind of adopting Iceberg? And do you have a use case already 100% relying on Iceberg yet, or is it still in kind of a trial phase, figuring out how you want to use that, and kind of at what point of maturity in the Trino connector and things like that are you ready to totally switch over? Is that the long game plan, is to move over to Iceberg for most of your Hive results?
I see. So for us, we are pretty still on the beginning of that journey. So basically, we started to rolling out to a few non-critical data sets, and but we are foreseeing a much bigger adoption in 2022.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I think that it's one of those things like, I always advise people who are using Iceberg, that are at least starting out and trying it, right? It's one of those things you don't want to just immediately hop and jump into, and then just like I typically say, like, what you'll want to do is kind of build out side by side, like Hive and Iceberg. Try to take your kind of a use case that typically makes a lot of sense, especially if you're trying to do transactions, or if you have tables that really rely on maybe schema changes or partition changing. A lot of these features that just will never be able to exist in Hive just the way it's modeled. Those things are very clearly like have the advantage to just use Iceberg out of the spot. So if you have use cases like that, you move over. But then taking it on a case by case basis and slowly building that out. And the hope, I think, in my mind, is like, I think Iceberg is ultimately the future, and I'm hoping that more people can kind of vet it out and see if there are any questions there. So don't have any extra questions yet. Nitu, did you have any questions, so I don't hold the thing the whole time?
No, I mean, I was right before the meetup. I was just talking to Yi and trying to understand, like, how they use, Trino at Pinterest. And Yi, you did talk about some of the reporting, use case. Anything that you'd want to share with our community on anything on reporting use case?
I think Trino is basically a really big portion of daily usage, and as you can see that basically every employee at Pinterest have used Trino once or twice per month. So that's pretty much the story. Basically, it's part of life, and it's critical to our business.
Gotcha. Is the Presto controller that you mentioned in there, is that using kind of just like, is that like kind of a service that you built around like kind of kubectl, that or Kubernetes basically, that is just a place for you to define the policies of managing it? Because it sounded like a lot of the things that you mentioned when you were talking about the Presto controller, it sounded a lot like things that kind of exist, like these kind of operators or things that might exist in Kubernetes already. So I was kind of curious, like, what does the Presto controller kind of add, and is it just kind of a wrapper around kubectl or something like that?
I see. I think that the Presto controller is probably not too much tied to Kubernetes, but is more Presto specific operations, right?
Okay.
So basically, it's a bunch of tools running on a service that constantly checks the Presto, basically send a Presto query to the cluster to do
I
a
see.
health check. And also, yeah.
Because I was thinking if maybe it was like if it's it sounded like there was some scaling pieces to it, and I'm guessing it's pulling out the information and kind of acting on, hey, is this this node is dead, bring up another one or something like that. Is that's the part where I was thinking it, getting it kind of confused.
I think the controller is more person specific. Like for example, we see that basically a person worker is doing some work but not making any progress. Then we kind of send a drain signal to it to drain it. So it's basically more person specific.
Okay.
Than Kubernetes.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's just a lot of people do have these sidecar applications where that essentially are ways that you can pull metrics or pull different kind of just information about number of nodes that are up and things like that. And that can actually they use those sidecar applications from some Kubernetes operator or something that, oh, okay, this thing, this Kubernetes cluster is not at this number or this value or something like that, or it's at this peak load. So I want to make sure that when it hits that peak load, that allows them to kind of add that extra logic into backing off on queries and things like that. So it sounds like that's what that's doing actually. So it makes a lot of sense. It's more of a sidecar application.
Yeah.
One question. Sorry, Brian.
Sure.
I just
Sure.
came to my head. When you guys were looking at Trino, was there anything else you were looking at for the same use case?
I didn't understand. What was the question, Neetu?
With Trino, ultimately you started using Trino, but were you guys testing anything else in comparison?
Did that make sense, Yi?
Yeah.
Before you were using Trino, what was there some other system that you were looking at?
Like we said in the beginning, we started with Redshift and Kubo and mostly Hive. So I think what Trino really replaces basically is Hive, and it does a really good job on replacing it. And
cool.
I think, yeah.
Do you, in terms of like being able to manage the level of scale and a lot of these different mechanisms, like for instance the controller, like you want to tell the Presto controller, hey, if you get above this threshold, I'm expecting a heavy load to come in, so let me lower the threshold and increase the amount of nodes or something. Is there some way for you to kind of register with the controller, kind of I'm thinking in terms of big picture data governance waves and how you can kind of manage these different resources and things like that. Is there a way to kind of interface with that you've all, like a REST service or something you can like call and say, hey, update these current settings to, this particular setting?
That's actually a good question. Actually, that is something we were thinking about, whether we should do auto scaling and when the cluster load is high.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, that will require some help from our basically the Kubernetes team within Pinterest. Also, there are basically also basically one problem is Presto is also using quite a bit of the resources from basically, so we need basically to benefit much from auto scaling because if usually what happens for Presto is basically for large compute increases you need to make a plan, right? And the auto scaling sometimes is basically don't add as much of the cost saving benefit.
Yeah. It's always hard, specifically with scaling, because it's easy actually to scale up. Kubernetes naturally makes that a very easy thing. It's hard when you have a resource that is once there and now has to go away. Is it doing some process? Is it really done? And those questions can be difficult to answer. I think the hardest part is actually scaling down and efficiently using resources, and that's where well, that's where things like Starburst become very super useful. But but yeah, so or else you kind of have to work with like a very custom type of system where you're trying to figure out all the events that might lead to an indication that, hey, we need to scale down now. This is it's a good time for this node based on this 5 criteria or whatever it may be to basically do this. And yeah, and Manfred's mentioning this right now. You can use graceful shutdown and to basically kind of do a detection when. And we did cover this a little bit in the Trinity's Trino on Kubernetes. But I know there are certain other events that are custom that different people want. They can get kind of hairy as to figuring out, when you can, like how to actually go about doing that. So sometimes it's a little bit to manage. Another question from Manfred real fast. And by the way, yeah, my co-host, he's, to Trino Community Broadcast, speaking of, does Querybook fully support Trino now? I don't know if this, you may or may not know this, but is it supporting Trino, the new name Trino, or is it still on just Presto?
I mean, currently still under the Presto name. So, okay. But I mean, yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's essentially supporting Presto SQL Trino, but what? And by the way, that kind of was another question I had. I was like, what version are you all using in Pinterest? And have you looked at? Are you looking to migrate to Trino if you're not there yet?
We are evaluating new versions of the Trino, but basically that's actually something under the roadmap.
Okay, so it's definitely lower than version 350 is the last Presto SQL version.
Yes,
and so that you're at 350, you think, or is that like is that where and then you just are kind of waiting to do the update? I bet I said 350 and it's probably 351. Okay, and no, there's another question. So yeah, so you're currently on like the last Presto SQL version, basically.
Right. Actually, so we had a plan to update the version, but it haven't been. So in last year, probably wasn't the top priority of our team, and the reason that is basically we have made a really lot of customized changes, and we need to kind of port that to the newest versions.
Speaking of the versions, yeah, Manfred's also saying if in terms of if it's just an HTTP header change, it should be a pretty straightforward PR, and I think he can update the docs so on that side or send a PR to update it. Cool. A last kind of thing I wanted to point out too. You mentioned you're about to go underway of this large kind of effort to integrate kind of the sending out a query from Trino and mapping that to kind of a Spark query and unifying the setup there. This is more of a question of like, have you heard one of the latest things that like Martin mentioned at Trino Summit, kind of talking about what we're now codenaming as Project Tardigrade? It's actually bringing fault tolerance into Trino and actually. We're talking a little bit about kind of making Trino much more usable as like an ETL engine now.
Yeah, I totally understand. We have effort of doing that. The first, I mean, for us, I think it's not just fault tolerance, and also the basically for the batch workflows, the resource management also is things important, and I think basically there are other factors.
Yeah. Like I know some of the other factors that I've seen kind of in the space too is like there's largely a lot of infrastructure that people write. So for instance, Trino is purely SQL. So if you're interfacing with Trino, you're just using ANSI SQL. But if you're interfacing with Spark, you might have the opportunity to write a some code in Java that or Scala or some JVM language that interfaces with a Spark library like a data frame, or I know like the the resilient data sets, is whatever it's called, the RD something. If you're able to kind of interface with Spark's actual resilient data. What is it? What is it called? Do you know what it is? He is a resilient
RDD.
RD. Yeah.
What's the last diff?
I can't remember it now. But anyways, it's a resilient data. It's the abstraction that they have that sits on top of their of how they write jobs, and that's kind of more low level. I think it's like RD whatever, and then it's data, because I haven't used it in so long. Now they have like data sets on top of that, and then there's like another the data frames in terms of the hierarchy, and then on top of that is Spark SQL, right? Yeah. So then it's like, if you have a lot of infrastructure, like specialized infrastructure around the jobs that you've written in Spark, it's not as clear cut to like copy those over into like a single interface. And I think that's kind of where a lot of the difficulty will be in terms of like, one or the other. So it doesn't really solve your use case, but I am just curious if like, for the ones that you're using Spark SQL, do those kind of more or less make sense, especially when it comes to like mapping SQL? That's where I started thinking like, well, instead of mapping SQL, you could just keep using kind of the other where you're using custom Spark client jobs, you keep using Spark for that. And then at least all of your SQL interface would just sit under Trino at that point. And if somebody wants to do, somebody who doesn't want to have to write a like RDD, resilient data. Oh, I still can't think of it. So anybody that wants to do a RDD, that essentially is, or doing some, data frame type of interaction, custom Java job. They can basically just use SQL through Trino to schedule some sort of ETL or something like that.
Yeah, actually, that's basically there are different directions we are actually exploring. So definitely, this is a project we don't have a definite set direction yet.
Yeah.
But this is definitely something we are exploring on both directions.
Because then it takes off that burden of like, oh, we have to do this weird SQL mapping thing. Because then at that point you're using like custom code stuff. There's still definitely a lot of like use cases, especially when it comes to like machine learning and things like that Spark definitely has out of the box. But then you have like a lot of the things that are more like I want to run ETL via SQL, and you have essentially like low code users that like don't want to learn how to, like, they don't know how to code Java or something like that. They just basically want to have some sort of data model that everybody knows, that essentially will just allow them to do the ETL in one place. And so that, in that sense, I think that's where I kind of see Tardigrade. It's not necessarily removing Spark from your ecosystem, but it's more just taking care of those spots where you're trying to expose a SQL interface and make that available to, and definitely engineers that are less, and focal to the data engineering team. Maybe they're like software engineers that use your product. They want to use that SQL, or if you have like other users, that's where I start seeing Tardigrade kind of, once we add in that fault tolerance and give people a little more comfort to using the ETL, it's going to be kind of like this. It opens up that capability to say, okay, if you're using SQL, you use Trino. If you're using kind of custom code around the, to read this stuff out, or you're still, ingesting or using stream ingestion, then that's all Spark still. That's where I'm kind of like, wondering if pondering out loud, essentially.
I think that is definitely something we are still not really certain about. Actually, basically, Trino and Spark SQL definitely both are pretty critical to our users, and so they have some, basically they have some overlaps, and so what we want to provide for our users is kind of within these overlaps, how can we serve them better, basically.
Yeah.
I think that what you said definitely makes sense. Basically, making personal data storing um, uh, the schedule workloads and bridging the gap there. Basically, there are different directions, and we definitely are
I'd
hoping
love to explain.
in
Yeah.
in the future
We can let's talk about this more offline if you're I'm interested to see how Pinterest workloads might benefit from this a little bit. So yeah, we can definitely talk more. I know it's kind of weird having this random conversation that you weren't expecting in front of a whole bunch of strangers that are listening to us right now, but we can and they're not strangers, they're all a community. I don't mean to say anything for our viewers, but yeah, we'll talk a little bit offline, and we'll and figure out, I think, a cool way to, maybe see if we can help that primary use case. Because I feel like that feels like an icky project to have to do that mapping. And I'm thinking maybe there's a way around that with what we have coming up down the line. But I wanted to say, I know we're kind of at time here. Thank you so much, Yi, for coming on, and thanks for all of those of you that are viewing now live, as well as here in the next weeks and months and maybe years down the road that they get to see this video. Thanks for taking a look at this, and really excited to see what's going on at Pinterest, and definitely want to hear more about it, especially as you guys are implementing more of the access stuff. I know that's a big problem in the space that many users are trying to solve. So thanks for sharing that with us. Please do give us a star on our Trino repository in GitHub. Always helps bring up the awareness. And follow us on Twitter at TrinoDB. I am at Bits on DataDev. And thank you very much for attending. And hopes you all will drive home safely, I should say, but you're probably already at home, hopefully. So.
Thank you so much, E.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care, everyone.